You're listening to the Backyard TARDIS Random Thoughts Podcast, part of the Red 5 Network.
Hey, Nicholas here with the Backyard TARDIS, part of the Red 5 Network. And we're here for another Star Wars Podcast Day 2026. And yeah, we're here for Star Wars Podcast Day. Now, you may be thinking, wait a second, I thought Star Wars Podcast Day was February 7th. And you would be right. But in addition to being a Star Wars fan here at the Backyard TARDIS, we are, of course, Doctor Who fans. And anybody who knows Doctor Who lore, for you Star Wars fans who don't know, the Doctor almost never, despite having a time machine, shows up at the right time. He always gets it wrong. So, yes, I am a few days late. This is mostly just due to life being busy and... all of a sudden, for some reason, I was thinking it was the middle of February, and then I realized, oh, shoot, I've only got a couple of days, and then life was busy, and I was tired, and we're finally here. So what is Star Wars Podcast Day? Well, for those that don't know me, my name is Nicholas, and if you have a podcast, I probably listen to it, because I listen to over 100 different podcasts. I'm a locksmith. This is the back of my locksmith van. These are stickers from podcasts that I listen to or have listened to in the past. And so the main gist of it is in between jobs, I come in my van and I talk and do a little bit of my own podcasting. And but Star Wars has a special relationship with podcasting because I'm part of a number of fandoms. I'm really big into Doctor Who, and if you look up Doctor Who podcast, you will probably get 24 podcasts or so that will show up, and maybe around a dozen of them that are actually active on the feed. If you look up Star Trek, I'm a big Star Trek fan. Star Trek, you probably get 3 or 4 dozen podcasts that might come up, with maybe a dozen and a half that are active talking Star Trek. Stargate, once again, you probably get about a dozen of them. But active, right now, Stargate's seeing a little bit of a resurgence, so there's suddenly a bunch more, but you're still probably only at about 20 podcasts active talking Stargate. When it comes to something like Quantum Leap, recently I did a Quantum Leap Revisited podcast over on the Price of Reason Live channel, and we went through the entire original classic show, and we felt like we were doing pretty unique, but I wanted to see if there were other people doing that. And there's about 9 other people who have done that, who have gone episode by episode and gone through the classic show. Very few actively do a show. There was some of those people came out around the time that the reboot show came out, and so they covered both the classic and the reboot, different things. But there are very few people that are talking Quantum Leap every week. Star Wars has a couple hundred active podcasts that do that. Podcast Day usually gets like 130 people involved in Star Wars Podcast Day, and yet that's only a fraction of the ones that are out there that even participate in Star Wars Podcast Day. And so when it comes to kind of genre subject talking, outside of like Marvel's big, they're big and active right now, but even they're not big. I'm sure there's, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Marvel, DC, there's podcasts around this, and I listen to a lot of them. I listen to a lot of different podcasts about all sorts of different things. And there's a lot of general movie podcasts, or classic 80s movies podcast, or horror movie podcasts, sci-fi movie podcasts, all these things. But to be on one specific brand, I don't think there's another brand that has as many podcasts about it as Star Wars. It is just a main pop culture phenomenon, and the big thing is how many decades it has been this big, because like Star Trek is one of those things, like it's been around for a long time. Doctor Who, it's older than both of them, but the bigger mainstream audience, like they didn't pick up Doctor Who till the reboot, and even then not until it was a couple seasons into it, and then it's dropped off. Like currently Doctor Who is not doing well. Star Trek, kind of the same, like during the TNG era, like it picked up, it got a little more popular. The movies really captured, but it is not held that point outside of like the super nerd in the pop culture reference. It's not, the majority of youth are not into Star Trek, but Star Wars has had generation after generation where it has successfully captured a huge amount of the crowd. And so then you have the Jedi Talk podcast. This came out February 7th, 1999. On your 56K modem on your Dreamcast. That's what people were listening to this thing on. This is really in the early days of the internet, and honestly, before this, a podcast was a radio show. And so back when radio shows were only local areas and they weren't nationwide and stuff like that, like we have now, it kind of made sense that you wouldn't have a radio show talking a subject that only a fraction of your audience might be interested in. So when podcasts kind of started to become available and became a thing, this kind of really exploded, because there were some nerd talk radio shows and stuff like that, but was not as common as, say, something like sports commentary or politics commentary or something like that, or just commentary on the Hollywood gossip or whatever. Those were more the radio talk shows would talk about that stuff. Not a lot of this pop culture sci-fi stuff that we have today. But they're kind of really on the cutting edge, because the thing about podcasting back then is just the cost that it cost you for somebody to download your podcast. That cost you money. You put it on a server, you put it there. Every time somebody downloads it, you're charged for the transaction. So you have to make it up in ads for the money being spent having people download it. We live in a world where these podcasting apps host this for free. YouTube hosts this for free. And so that goes away. They put commercials on it so that they can garner money, but back then you had to try to get somebody to put a commercial on something that you made or on your website, or somehow make that money back, because if it was a success, you could actually be doomed because it was a success, because now a ton of people were downloading your stuff. So the fact that they were pioneering this all the way back then, and they were doing fun stuff. They weren't just talking. They were doing kind of their little Stormtrooper Bob and that. And if you're interested, there's another podcast which participates in Star Wars Podcast Day every year called Jedi Talk. It's not the original guys, but usually for the Jedi or the Star Wars Podcast Day, they get the guys from the original Jedi Talk. They come on and they've been sharing and reposting some of their old stuff, and that's been real fun to go back and hear. So it really, as someone who's really into podcasting and got into podcasting through video game podcasting, of people who talked about retro video games and stuff like that, and that's really where I got my start. But then slowly got in, and then as I met the people on the Red 5 network and that got formed, I was there kind of day one as a super fan, and slowly got into where I was making podcasts and doing that. Star Wars has such a significant contribution, and Jedi Talk themselves, a significant contribution to the overall narrative. Now, what am I going to talk in this particular podcast? Well, I'm going to do something. I know a lot of people use this as their opportunity to kind of give you what their podcast is like. This is not going to be what my podcast is like. Although I do discuss news and stuff sometimes, but I'm usually out of the gossip era. I like to talk more about the lore and what I enjoy about stuff, and not really what I dislike or that. But I think this year is going to be a touchstone moment in Star Wars. This is going to be a significant pivoting point, and I feel like, in fact, I actually feel like 2026 and /2020, like, they may not be remembered very well, but this is going to be the transition period, and that is because of the big announcement of Kathleen Kennedy stepping down. And I wanted to talk a little bit, and we also hear that Bob Iger is stepping down too. And so these are huge shakeups in the industry, and they're huge shakeups of what's going on, and some people are happy, some people are not. And I kind of wanted to go over what Star Wars has done under Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger, and what I've liked and what I've disliked, and what my expectations going forward, and whether I think this is a good thing, bad thing. And I just talk about that a little bit, and my answers might surprise you a little bit. I am not a sequel fan. I'd be right out there, out in the front in that, but I'll come right out and say it that if you didn't watch my podcast last year, like in my relationship to Star Wars, I was also somebody who wasn't happy with the prequels. I walked out of Revenge of the Sith before the movie ended, got my money back, and basically said, I'm done with Star Wars. I'm a Star Trek fan. and just completely got rid of everything. Got rid of all my collection, all my books, everything. And it wasn't until the Disney acquisition that my ears perked up. And when I came back to it, and kind of, it wasn't until then, in anticipation for that started watching Rebels and Clone Wars and all that kind of stuff. Really falling back in love with the property. And I realized, like, for all my gripes about the storytelling, at the end of the day, droids, X-Wings, and lightsabers are cool. And this universe is just, it's cool. And so whether I needed to not be so pearl-clutching and stuff like that, it's okay to not like something. You don't have to force yourself to keep watching something until you like it. You don't have to, soft foot around subjects and try to not hurt feelings and say, oh, I love everything. You also don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. There's so much good about this franchise. And it really, if you think you're sticking it to some big mega corp or something, that at the end of the day, it should be more about your enjoyment. And if you're going to enjoy this part but not that part, watch that part. Don't go, I'm going to abstain from this because I want to hurt some big mega corp. Don't force yourself to watch and engage in something because you feel like you owe some big mega corp something. But go through. I already established, not a fan of the prequels. I walked out of The Force Awakens. It was a good experience, but I felt like this was kind of cheap. This was a rehash of A New Hope, done worse. I didn't like the big CGI monster that Han Solo had on his ship. I didn't like that Han Solo died. I really didn't like that Kylo Ren threw a hissy fit. That was like everything from the prequels that I disliked about Anakin coming flooding back. I'm like, oh my goodness, he's even more emo Anakin, is who this Kylo Ren guy is. But I walked out going, I like the character of Rey, I like the character of Finn, and I like the character of Poe, and I'm looking forward to where they go. I walked out of The Last Jedi. Now, mind you, Luke is not I'm a Han Solo guy. Luke, I like Luke, but I wasn't as precious about him. The stuff they did to him in The Last Jedi, I felt like, okay, having him milk the sea cow thing and get it all over, like, that's just gross. But I got that they were trying to go for, the kooky Obi-Wan Kenobi, the kooky Yoda in the hut. They were trying to fill that trope with Luke. The difference is both of them start out kooky and then get serious and they train. Luke never did that in the movie. I had no problem with him throwing the lightsaber. In fact, in my mind, that lightsaber never left his hand. In fact, when he, I would have liked for them to be training and for him to call that back to himself. But like the moment a lot of people are real upset over that. I wasn't so. Everything with Canto Bight didn't make sense, felt really out of place. Worrying about horse races while the galaxies felt preachy and it out of left field. Like, it felt like real world preachy about horse races and rich people and war profiteering and all these different things. And none of it felt like it was about what the movie was. And so it really took me out of it. All the stuff with Holo really diminished Poe's character. And then having him do the Yo Mama jokes at the beginning also really didn't help his character. But having him mutiny against the other resistance. The reducing Finn's role to... So I walked out of that movie. Yes, I didn't like what they did with Luke. I would have liked when R2-D2 showed that message, like if Luke had actually gotten serious about training her instead of giving her like, I'm training you, but only because I have to, and really doing a horrible job at it, teaching you lessons that why you shouldn't get trained, type things. I feel like if R2-D2 had done that and then he got fully on board with training her, it would have been a much better way to do that movie. But he had a cool moment there when he faced off with Kylo Ren as that, but then he, farted out as a Force ghost and had kind of a Force stroke and died. That was kind of not what I would have wanted for the character. But all in all, like, I'm not as precious about Luke. I walked out of that movie going, wow, that made me like all of the sequel characters even less. Like Rey's whole like sudden infatuation with Adam Driver's abs, and kind of like all those Force like that felt really awkward and off. Poe, the mutiny thing, and then and Finn, like any character growth he had in the first movie was like completely wiped out. His whole adventure with Rosiko was just annoying and horrible, and so I walked out of that movie just liking all of these characters. If there was any character that maybe I liked a little bit more than I did the first one, was Kylo Ren, and that like he stepped up and when he took out Snoke, that actually made that character a little more interesting. And then The Rise of Skywalker, I walked out of that movie feeling that I had a positive experience because I felt like it addressed some of the things that were my concerns in The Last Jedi. I've listened to a lot of podcasts about a lot of people talk about all the flaws, all the stories, the Wayfinder that finds the thing, and how does some ancient thing from years ago have the markings of the Death Star wreckage, and none of it probably makes sense. And it's space horses on top of Star Destroyers running around. Could pick that movie out. I've never watched it again. I've never watched any of the sequel movies a second time. But I want to maintain that I had a good experience. Like, I walked out of the theater happy. I was like, well, I wasn't expecting much. I wasn't happy with the sequel trilogy, and so I was like, this addressed some of my concerns. I didn't think it could have made a movie that I would have been like super like it. I don't think it could have saved it. Colin Trevorrow's script, I've seen what supposedly is a leak of that, and I think that would have done better to make the trilogy as a whole more unified and make more sense, but is what it is. So there's those movies. Rogue One. Everybody loves Rogue One. I did not care for Rogue One, except for like the last 30 minutes, and it was just mainly because of the way it was cut and edited, and it really didn't... I am not one that I don't like seeing the rebels do the, they're supposed to be heroic good guys. The original Star Wars film is almost presented in a way that could be considered like propaganda. In that, when your country goes to war, the way that war is presented to its own nation is always that your troops are good, they're the good guys, they're out there liberating people, blah, blah, blah. And then you can have things that show, oh no, they went into war turned on, and a lot of innocent civilian people that just happen to live there, they're getting caught in the crossfire. No matter which side is right or wrong in the conflict. Like that always seems to happen. But in Star Wars, our heroes are our heroes. They are just there. And Andor was really kind of trying to show the middle ground that like the heroes, like they're killing good and decent people too, and it's a little bit of escapist. It's a little bit. I don't need it to be real world in that way. It takes away from the flavor for me. I did enjoy the end battle, and of course I really enjoyed Vader there at the end. Of course, you have K2SO was brilliant in it. Really like that. And so I'll go ahead and go into Andor. I watched the first season. I haven't watched the second season yet. I haven't. I've seen clips from it, but it's too real world in that way, and not enough galaxy long time ago, far, far away. But, I get why people like it. I'm not going to say the production is not there, although in some ways the production's there, but it's not there in like watching Andor and seeing the local PD come out in modern day SWAT vests was, as somebody who works with SWAT, like that really took me out of it. But we're kind of skipping ahead because we got to go through the shows again. Then you have the movie Solo. Solo was something that I didn't like. I probably would have liked it better if it had been Lando, a Star Wars story, because the actor that they got for Lando fit the role much better. The guy, I just couldn't buy him as Solo. The movie was very muted, very brown. I didn't go see it in theaters because it was right after The Last Jedi, and I just too much, too soon, didn't care. And I saw it later at home. I've seen that one twice, and I don't regret not seeing it in the theater. It was not anything special. It wasn't bad. It didn't offend me in any way. It was everything meaningful in Solo's life happened in the events of one adventure. Every little detail that we knew about him from any moment was crammed into that movie. People harp on Filoni for doing that, and no, this was not his thing, but it definitely was that way. Okay, let's get to the other talk with the big ones, like The Mandalorian came out. That blew me away. I mean, that really blew me away. And I just was really impressed with the production of that. It felt like a sequel to Return of the Jedi. It felt like it was coming out in the 90s. Like if they did a Star Wars TV show in the 90s, this is what it would feel like. As far as like the textures of everything, the way that looked almost grainy in the filming and stuff like that. And the world was full of the aliens we knew, the people we knew, all of this amazing. Loved it. And, yes, I love the situation with Baby Yoda. I had a working theory that the Mandalorian is Grogu. That this is the tale of how he becomes the one that unites Mandalore. And he's going to be the next one to wield a rebuilt Darksaber. A lot of people, season 1, here we go. Now, season 2, I think it had some roughness in the pacing in the first half of the season. But that second half of that season, man, that was powerful, getting to see Ahsoka and then Boba Fett and Bo-Katan, and then getting that battle where they all came together to rescue Grogu, and you got Luke and the Death Troopers, all that stuff. Really good, really good. There were a couple episodes in the beginning that were kind of... Season 3, a lot of people rag on Season 3, and I think Season 3, as a minister, I really enjoyed that one. I look at that as definitely good in quality. The idea of him being disassociated, disfellowshipped, cast out of the Mandalorian Order, and as a minister, ones have to be removed from the congregation because they're in danger to the congregation, and that they're doing things that could affect the spirituality of others, and promoting things that are against the practices of the code of the religion. And when they want to come back, they have to make amends. They have to show they do that. And what do they have to do? Well, they have to meet with the ministers. And they have to go, okay, have you taken this step? Have you taken that step? And they have to give status updates. Even if nothing's changed, even if they haven't made it, we'll have every so often, if they're on their journey to coming back, that, and we saw that in season 3. We saw him meeting in with a forger and talking to her, and what steps are you making? And he's got to go to Mandalore, and the correspondence with Bo-Katan, who's helping him on this journey, but she is somebody who has completely lost her faith. She is not trying to come back. And in fact, she blames the church in aspects, because she was one of the fanatical group. She was part of Death Watch. She was part of that, and she has now experienced that she's lost everything, and she has lost all faith in what the thing, and she's looked at her sister was all about peace and this and that and prosperity, and she has watched how the fanaticism actually destroyed her world. She thought it was going to save it, it was going to make it stronger, it was going to bring back the glory days, and in fact it destroyed her world. And so she's completely lost faith, and in this she gains her faith back. But her having the cynicism where he is trying to get back at that, they even have a point where he's got to get on a transport and they say, you can't take your weapons. He's like, I'm a Mandalorian, weapons are my religion. There's so much symbolics, and the mythosaur is part of the legend there, and the seeing that and the stuff with Bo-Katan and all that really just goes well. And going back to like so much of that, like now there was one episode. And yes, it's the episode with Lizzo and Jet Black and all that and stuff where I felt like the messaging in that was off. These people were in a utopian society where droids were working as slaves and humans should have to do nothing, or I should say organics. And the Mandalorian basically came and reinforced that society of people who do nothing and just live off of machines helping them. And it's basically he showed up, stopped Wally, and kept everybody on the thing. If you want to go the Pixar route there, I didn't care for that. Let's take a step back. We'll go Book of Boba Fett. Book of Boba Fett. This one, it started out strong. I was digging the whole Tusken Raider lifestyle thing, explaining why he's been out of the loop. He found a new family, this, that. They killed it off and it never meant anything. It didn't come back into it. The stuff with him honestly, once again, there's one episode that really draws us down, but you had the mods. And the mods, they just looked silly. They looked like teeny boppers. They didn't look impressive in any ways. Black Chrysanthemum was amazing in live action. The moment he got took down by the mods made him less cool. Everything about that, the constantly having Boba Fett not be Boba Fett was bad, but the 2 Mandalorian episodes in that were some of the best parts of that. I honestly, they just should have let Boba Fett have some moments like he did in Mandalorian Season 2. And gotten rid of the mods, or just changed how they look. You could have had the concept of the mods, but make them look like an actual biker gang of young guys and stuff like that. Don't make them look like they should be at Hot Topic. It's like, that's my main complaint with that. Kenobi, as a show, that one was interesting because I'm not a prequel fan, but I feel like after everything that went wrong, Kenobi was a chance for them to win a lot of fans back, especially the prequel fans that weren't happy. The George Lucas, like, a lot of them showed up for that show. That show got one of the smallest budgets out of all the streaming shows, despite the fact that it had 2 big name actors that probably were not cheap. So that means it probably cost more in actors than any of the other shows. And yet you see that. You see that in the special effects. You see that in the design. It was so goofy. And to me, I'm just like, I felt like this was kind of like Boba Fett for OT fans. Like, this was a slam dunk that they completely missed. And I feel like by that time, Lucasfilm should have been feeling the pressure. They should have been feeling the need to nail Kenobi. And they didn't. They just simply didn't. The Acolyte. Not much I can say about The Acolyte. I didn't watch it. It wasn't for me. It was made clear it wasn't for me. And from a little bit of what I heard from other people podcasting and clips that I saw, Jedi offing themselves and cis seducing through nude bathing and all that kind of stuff. I'm glad I didn't watch it. There. Okay, that is big news. I saw advertisements for that everywhere. On the reverse of that, you had Skeleton Crew, and Skeleton Crew was Goonies in space, which is what it also was advertised, and it was enjoyable. It didn't offend me. It was a little more kiddie, but it wasn't overly to the point that I just was like, oh, this is unbelievable, or this is too dumb. It was a fun adventure. I really enjoyed it. Next to The Mandalorian, it's my favorite live-action Star Wars show. So that came out, but it came out to almost no fanfare. So many people don't even know that exists. And some of the stuff that they showed, where they showed kind of like they're on this hidden planet that is kind of living outside of the rest of the galaxy, and it felt a little more like they're in suburbs and stuff like that, and that really irritated. Well, the show almost takes almost non-existent to that area, so that really. But if I were to say anything, I would say that Skeleton Crew feels like what you would expect if Spielberg had made a Star Wars movie or show. That's how I would describe it. Felt very much Hook, felt very much The Goonies, with a Star Wars flair, and very Star Wars flair. Loved that. Loved all the references and stuff like that. Now, let's go over to, during this period, we have like the books and the comics. The comics have been kind of up and down for me. Same with the books. It's not been the same. Now, some of the new Thrawn books have been amazing. Love those. The High Republic, I didn't hate the High Republic. It was a slow start. And there was stuff in it I didn't. And one of the things with the High Republic is that they created that era to have multiple huge storylines going on at the same time, multiple things threatening the Republic at the same time. And they put different storylines for different age groups. And so, like, they had this plant that was like a danger of consuming planets or whatever, versus this monster that would attack things of the Force, and the Nihil with Marchand Rowe. So there were some good things. However, they decided to do it, then do a prequel series, then do the sequel series following and mirroring Star Wars. That was not a good decision. They left it on a big, huge cliffhanger at the end of a third book, of books that were really long, really drawn out with a lot of characters. It took a long time to really get to know these characters and to care about them. And you finally get to a point where you're really caring about them and you're caring about what they're happening. You have a cliffhanger. Did one just die? Did one just get maimed? What's happening? And now we're going to have the prequel series. And it killed all interest I had in it. So I was like, that's it. Let's get into animation. Okay, animation. Love Clone Wars. Clone Wars Season 7. Amazing. Okay. Rebels, first season, real slow, real kiddie. Takes a while. A lot of people give up before they even get to it. But if you get to the end of that and then start watching the second season, I'm telling you, you're going to be hooked. That second season, so much better. The end of the first season, And it only, when you get to like season 3 and 4, like it really gets big. And that takes us to Ahsoka. I didn't talk about Ahsoka as a live action. Ahsoka as live action is kind of a guilty watch. There are cool moments in Ahsoka. There's a lot of storyline threads and stuff I love in Ahsoka. It doesn't tie itself up or explain anything in the series it is. Ahsoka should have just been Rebels live action. Actually, or it should have been another Rebels season done in animation with animated Ahsoka. And I think they should have, for the Ahsoka show, I think they should have been doing parallels of Ahsoka talking to Luke and then showing the young girl as that and doing prequel stories in between, talking and swapping and telling Luke who his father was. That to me would have been a much better Ahsoka show than what we got. Because the effects, the fighting of the ones that the Night Sisters had revived and stuff, it looked so corny and so bad. I got really excited when I found out Sam Witwer was voicing, was it Marok or whoever the like Inquisitor that somehow made it all the way through all the wars and stuff like that. And there's this Inquisitor that's alive. Turns out he's also a revived Night Sister person, even though he's working for the Jedi and not for them. I don't fully understand that. This show left a lot of loose ends. Obviously having David Tennant playing Hu Yang in live action was brilliant, amazing. They butchered the character of Sabine Wren. She is not like she is in the cartoons. They're trying to show that she has some drama. They're also butchering the character of Ahsoka. She doesn't smile. She doesn't act like Ahsoka in this. And we've already seen Rosario Dawson portray Ahsoka in The Mandalorian and do it what I feel is the right way. So, weird direction. I don't think Dave Filoni is that good at directing live action. We'll get into that. But if you haven't noticed, I ramble. I ramble a lot. But, so here we have just some bad acting, some bad effects, this story would have been better as a cartoon. I think they could have told a much more beautiful and cohesive story if they had done this as like a 20 episode or 16 episode cartoon or something, instead of, 6 or 8 episodes as a live action show. It did not work. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't have done an Ahsoka live action show. I just gave my pitch of what I would have done with that. Because especially since the little girl who played young Ahsoka did a phenomenal job, and they're taking so long to make out a season 2, like, she's going to grow up where she can't play Ahsoka anymore. That was like, I think after that episode, what was that, like the 5th episode came out, like everybody was like, do a whole show of her in Clone Wars time, was what everybody was demanding. It didn't, though, just pull on Rebels. It also pulled on some of the book lore about, the Mortis arc, the father, the son and the daughter, and the mother. The mother wasn't in the animated arc, but it was in the books. And the mother is supposedly the source of the Night Sisters' powers, where their powers and their side, they're not the dark, they're not the light, they're an unnatural, using the Force in a way that is not of natural, because of the backstory of her and how she was jealous that she didn't have the Force power, and she went through this effort to gain the powers and stuff like that. And so they're on Pridia, this ancient planet of legends, and I didn't have as much problem. I don't think they communicated this with, but Sabine, once again going back to midichlorians, she has an ability to tap into the Force, but not to any significant amounts. Hu Yang tells her she would not have been accepted by the Jedi. In fact, ones who showed like that would become people who were like temple guards and stuff like that had like limited Jedi abilities. She was low enough that she probably wouldn't even have qualified for that. But like the guys we see in Rogue One that were like temple servants or whatever, like those are people that had an amount of Force sensitiveness, but they didn't have enough that they could ever become proficient. They could serve in the temple and serve the Jedi and serve the Force, so to speak. And so that's why, Kanan never tried to train her. Ahsoka is trying, she feels that the Jedi Order was a failure, so she thinks, I'll try to train or whatever. And she's not making it. They show routinely she's not getting that skill, but then she starts having powers on this planet, and I feel, and I hope that in season 2 this does get clarified, that part of it is the planet. She is not going to suddenly have all this Force ability when she gets back. That this planet, much like when they were in the Mortis arc and they were on the Mortis planet, that suddenly all of Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka's powers suddenly got multiplied, especially Anakin as the chosen one, just got amplitude because they're in this planet where like the Force is just teeming and thoughts become realities and stuff like that, and they were having all these Force visions and stuff, just like Luke in the cave. That was like the whole planet is like that cave. And so I feel like if she has even an ounce of being able to tap into the Force, then suddenly being on this planet, that's magnified, by 100 or whatever, because she's on this planet. So suddenly she's displaying Force abilities. Knowing Filoni, knowing some of the stories he's gone with, that's where I feel like they were going. However, it's come out that like they talked about doing this in Rebels, and they decided as a room, and it really kind of sounded like this was maybe a pitch that Filoni had, and everybody else says, no, you're just going to be retreading the Ezra Bridger story arc. We want to do something else with Sabine. Well, Going on with animation, The Bad Batch. This is another one. Like, people slept on this show. They watched the first season or half a season, and they were like, oh, this is the mission of the week. Even if they made it to season 2 really was the mission of the week, and that really could... People... There's this whole complaint about filler. And as somebody who is a Stargate fan, who is a Star Trek fan, who is a Doctor Who fan, this funniness of Star Wars fans not being trained for TV and constantly complaining about filler in a 20-something episode a year cartoon really gets to me. Like, I'm like, sometimes for me, I show up for the adventure of the week. I want to see, oh, they're on a bounty mission. And it's funny because people who do not like Grogu, they're like, oh, we really want to get back to Mando doing the adventure of the week and going doing the bounty. But yet, anytime he did an adventure of the week, they're like, where's the story? Isn't he supposed to be getting Grogu to a Jedi? We know he's going to get him to Luke. Let's get somewhere in that story. But then when Grogu came back, they're like, oh, no, more of this, of him and Grogu. I wanted the bounty of the week. So Bad Batch delivers on that. But when you want to talk about story of like the transition from the Republic, the old Republic to the, the High Republic, I guess, is the Republic in the time of the Clone Wars, to the Empire. The transition from the Stormtroopers to the TK regular Stormtroopers, from the Clone Troopers, amazing in those storylines, and setting up stuff all the way to the future with the cloning. Really good, really good quality. And I've come to the conclusion that I would be okay if all Star Wars going forward was animated, because outside of Star Wars Resistance, there hasn't really been an animated show that has let me down. And going on with that, we've had What If. Now, What If has had 3 seasons. Visions. Visions has had 3 seasons. And, these are giving from cultures outside. The first was all from Japanese culture. The second one was from around the world. And the third was back to Japanese culture. Now, they say that Japanese culture, but these are people... A lot of these studios are in other countries other than Japan. They just maybe have a head that is Japanese, but like the actual production studios outside, but they're making content for Japan. Excuse me. So, that just being Japan. And I hear a lot of people say like, oh, it's all anime, it's all the same. I'm like, very diverse in the art styles between these, because anime has tons of different styles. There isn't like this is anime style. In the first season, there was an episode called Toby, and Tobi, I believe. And it's a little robot boy, and he's got a retired Jedi in there in hiding as his creator. And a lot of people didn't like that episode. I love that episode because I knew, whether it was Astro Boy or Mega Man, it's Japanese culture's take on the Pinocchio story, and the idea of in those things like Astro Boy, the guy was a brilliant scientist, never had time for his son because he was always buried into his work. His son dies in a car accident, and he takes his son's soul. He has the technology he's created, he's captured that, and he puts it into this robot. And the idea that he then wants to shelter and control and protect this robot because it is his son. But the robot has the burning sense of adventure and wanting to help people and be out there and put himself in danger. And so then you see, like, this is a master who lost his Padawan, and he has used the Force to take his Padawan's essence, his Force ghost, whatever you want to say, and put it into this droid. And this droid wants to grow up and be a Jedi and explore and he's, no, we must hide, we must protect, I must keep you safe. And so there's a lot of depth there. Now, in this recent season, there is a episode that a lot of people made fun of because there was a droid who was like a big teddy bear with a microwave in his tummy. And I was right there with you. But then I got to learn a little bit when you watch the interviews with the directors and the people who made it, and they said in Japanese, when they translated the movies, the OT movies into Japanese, they call him Darth Vader. They don't translate that. Just like they don't Luke Skywalker or any of that. Like their names are their names. But Darth Vader, sounds something like a dark teddy bear or something like that. And so every time they announce it, that in Japan, like, people would giggle because they're like, oh, this dark teddy bear is going to be coming. This teddy bear is going to be coming for it. So they have this image in their mind that they make fun of as like, oh, he's a teddy bear. He's a teddy bear. The other thing that they would make fun of is that his coat reminded them of, in Japan, like the colorful microwave buttons. And so his little chest piece, they would say, looked like a microwave door, in your program and all that stuff. So when they made this character, it's actually really enriched in Star Wars, but through Japanese culture, how they consume Star Wars. And so if you don't take the effort to dig that deep, then it's like, oh yeah, it's just anime with a Star Wars coding. But it really is digging in at the heart of the culture of how Star Wars is. And so when you take the time to do that, I think is really well. And I've come to find that I love not having to worry about how it affects canon. I like that. Some people like, oh, what's the point of bothering? I like seeing X-Wings. I like seeing TIE Fighters. I like seeing AT-ATs. I like seeing Ewoks. I like seeing this stuff. And lightsaber battles and all that kind of stuff. Inquisitors versus Jedi and all that kind of... And so I get to watch that with this. And I don't have to sit there and go, oh, are they messing up canon? I just get to enjoy it. And I find that refreshing. So I like Visions. Now, have I thought that they're all great? No. But it is something that I feel like is worth rewatching. It's worth digging into. There's some that I like more than other. That last one of this past season was a real acid trip. I think the animators did a little acid to come up with the visuals. But the animated Lego stuff, this has been some of the funnest stuff. The Rebuild the Galaxy, the two of those, huge deep cuts. Darth Jar Jar, bringing Jax back, hilarious jokes. The like summer vacation, holiday special, stuff like that. Making fun of the sequels, making fun of the prequels, making fun of, like, there was a moment in the first Rebuild the Galaxy where they're trying to explain to this Luke, who is like he's like a NASCAR driver, but for pod racing, that he's like super famous on the planet and blah, 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 because he wins all the races and because he's got the Force. And that was what his life would have been if he had stayed on Tatooine. And he's like, let me get this straight. You want me to go out there so that my sister be dead, I'll be dead. And you think that's how the galaxy should be and I should help you achieve that? And they're like, well, when you put it like that, it's like showing that the sequel trilogy was really a bad outcome for Luke Skywalker. The fact that they were allowed to put that there, I love that. Brilliant humor. Some of the things that I enjoy most. So animation, whether it's Visions, Lego, the parody stuff, or whether it's like the serious stuff like Rebels, Clone Wars, The Bad Batch, we're about to have this new Maul one. And so kind of looking forward to what we have now in the works. This Maul thing, that's that Mando and Grogu movie, that I haven't been hyped for a Star Wars movie like that really since The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens I was pretty hyped for. Wasn't really hyped for any of the ones after that. 200 terribly much. I had my expectations checked. I am super hyped for Mando and Grogu. That is outside of the OT, the Mandalorian Grogu is my top thing. But I'm really excited for Maul's Shadow Lord. The stuff with Ryan Gosling, that everything that I hear about that just keeps stacking upon itself, making that sound better and better and better and better. And so I do have high hopes that as a standalone movie, I am going to enjoy that. Whether it's something that I'm going to feel like, oh, this would be a great jumping off point, I don't know. But as a standalone thing, I think it's going to be great. So, going over that, Kathleen Kennedy, she's out. I think she shouldn't have ever been the studio head. I think the two-prong approach that they're going now, I think that should have been the approach from the beginning with her and Dave Filoni, maybe. Or maybe somebody else. I don't think Dave Filoni should be directing live action, but I think he should be in control of lore. I think he does a good job with lore. And I think if he's the one in charge and not being, but he's also a company man. So I don't know if things are going to improve or not, because I know if he's told to do this way or that way, he will follow that. He will follow that. we're also having a changeover of Bob Iger. And Kathleen Kennedy, to me, she's not the boogeyman. Obviously, she had certain agendas. She's openly a feminist and had those agendas and wanting to make Star Wars more open to girls, which is not a bad thing. But she was, some of it was at the expense of guys, and she was really pushing directors, don't just make a Star Wars, make Leslie Headland Star Wars or something, which was bad advice. Bad advice. And she constantly was having to cancel things, whether that was because Bob Iger was pulling the plug because, this is a financial disaster. I almost feel like she was announcing things before getting Iger's permission on things and then having to silently cancel them. And it was just poorly run in that way. She's great at what she did, and people try to go back and talk about her legacy, but her legacy was working with some of the greatest directors of all time, especially Steven Spielberg. A lot of her credits go to Steven Spielberg. And I think she was pivotal in those movies, in the role that she was playing, but her role was not studio head. And I feel like that just wasn't the job for her. Now, when it comes to Filoni, I think Filoni is a great story guy. I think he's great in animation. I think he understands George Lucas's ideas about the Force and some of those different things really well. I don't know if he also is a studio head. I don't think he has the experience in that. I don't think he has enough experience in live action to be directing his own movie. All these things. So I'm cautiously optimistic. It could get better. It could get worse because of this stuff. And I think it will take a good couple of years before the old stuff is off the vine and the new stuff is on the vine. And a lot of it will go to also what the new directions of the heads of Disneyland want to do. Now we have the changes in the parks. I am so glad that they're getting out of having it tied to the sequel area, that we're going to get that. And I haven't gone to Galaxy's Edge. I used to be somebody who went to Disneyland every 2 years. I haven't been to Disneyland since 2018. So I really want to go. I want to see it. But it's been too expensive. They gotta fix the parks. They gotta make things right at the parks. So I am cautiously optimistic for the future of Star Wars. I'm not ready to do a victory lap though. The people that they've put in charge are not proven people. They didn't get people from outside that were having a great track record somewhere else, and having them take over here. There are people who were working inside the system that was broken. They might have been some of the better parts of the system. They might have been this, but we don't know what it's going to look like with them in head. And once again, with a new guy taking over, when Chapek took over, Iger was still really in control. He was still on the board. He was still in that. So really, if this is going to be another Iger puppet, will we see changes? Will we see changes? I just feel like this moment right now, Star Wars Podcast Day in 2026 is going to be an interesting time capsule, because I feel like it's an end of an era. We've talked about it. You have the OT era, and then we have the era from when they started doing the special editions and the prequels and all that, and then it kind of, after Clone Wars ended, it went dark, and then you had the Disney era, and I feel like this is going to be the second chapter of the Disney era. And whether fans accept it or they don't, how well it does or doesn't do, it's this. But changes are being made, and so it'll be interesting to see how it goes going forward. And I'm really hoping it goes well. So, Lightspeed to Endor. Hope everybody has a good day, and I will catch you next episode.
Greetings, listener. Just a reminder that the podcast you just heard is a proud member of the Red 5 Network family. Red 5 Network offers you a great variety of shows you'll be sure to love. So the next time you're itching for quality content, make sure you head over to Red 5 Network. You'll find this podcast along with a whole lot more. All wings report in. It's the Red 5 Network.